with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission for the Judiciary.
Fair enough. Briefly, why do you think you are suitable for this position?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first witnessing of an election was somewhere in 1988, which I was still a minor, but I witnessed an election where there was Mlolongo at the time. Having seen how parties would come with their photographs, hold them, a party candidate, their photographs would be on their head, and then people come to line up behind them, and then they would now tell others not to come and line up behind this candidate and push them to the others. I saw quite a number of malpractices around that time. My experience in Tana River was that there was ethnic clashes, but the underlying reasons that were there for those ethnic clashes had something evidently to do with the devolution system that the country was adopting, and there was a community that was feeling that it would miss out on leadership in this area, and therefore instigated violence so that there would be transfer of voters from one area to another. I think I'm suitable. I have held positions within the judiciary where I've discharged my responsibilities with utmost integrity and with efficiency and with professionalism. This job, before I applied, I had a discussion with people who matter to me, including my family and members of my family. And one of the things that was going around is that this is a very heavy position. This is a very tough job. And that even if you're a good man, chances are that you will walk out tainted. I said, this is the period where patriots step up and say that their country needs them. And this is the time, looking at what happened in the last election and what happened between the commissioners, I think this is the time to consolidate whatever we have so that we can at least induce in this institution some level of confidence and give it credit with members of the public, because there is a bit of loss of confidence in the institution, and I think good men must step up for this position.
So fair enough, you are suitable because you think you're a good man.
Not just good man, I am professionally qualified for the position. I've also served, and I know and understand how to manage organizations.
Thank you very much. I will ask the Vice Chair, Ms. Linda Kiume, to take up the next section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Honorable Orot, the IEBC Act, it envisages a commission that comprises persons with mixed sets of skills and disciplines. Please tell this panel the skills and competencies that you possess that brings in a new form of aura for purposes of your work as a chairperson of the commission.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. First and foremost, the constitutional requirements are that you should be an advocate of a certain number of years in practice. Secondly, I have, like I've said, I've not just been your traditional judicial officer who sits in court, goes home. I've also served in capacities where my decision was required for the purposes of greater good of both the institution and the country. I bring in the skill sets of competence. I bring in the skill set of collegiality and teamwork and being able to achieve within a team. And I also bring a skill set of my professional qualifications as an advocate and having served. Like I forgot to mention that I have been a trainer with the Judiciary Committee on elections, and I have done 2 election disputes before me, and from those 2 that I have been able to handle, I was able to mine what is some things that are that are important to bring changes into the institution of the IEBC. When I handled the election disputes before me, I was able to determine that there are gaps here that needs to be filled, and these are important tools that I bring with me. I also bring with me the judicial approach to issues. I'm a judicial officer, so I'm bringing with it decision making, where we import those values that come about with our decision-making approaches, where we do fairness, we ensure that parties are happy and are pleased with everything that we do in the determination of disputes that come before them. I bring also I think I want to wrap this in the commission. I actually want to say that there is infusion of integrity. There is infusion of integrity into the institution that has to come from the commissioners themselves, who must lead from the top. And I think that person will be able to lead from the top with that integrity. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you.
Did you say you have any other training other than your legal and law training?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I am a continuing student of Masters in International Conflict Management. The only thing I think remaining for me to conclude that is deliver my report. I had a discussion with my supervisor in early January, and I'm able to complete this so that by September I'll be able to graduate. And the reason it has delayed particular masters is because first I fell sick in the beginning when these issues when I concluded the coursework, and then thereafter I took up a task to do an interrogation of the conflict between the Pokot and Turkana, because it is home to me, and there are dynamics that are changing every single day, so I keep changing and reviewing my position on certain things.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to ask member of the panel, Madam Caro Kituku, to take up and ask you some questions. Caro.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Honorable Lolot, you have told us that you have not been a traditional judicial officer, in your own words, quoting you. The IBC chairperson is expected to have a legal background, which you have. So now please tell us, as a judicial officer, how have you contributed or been involved in elections or any electoral matters? And while at it, tell us what has been your major contribution to the electoral processes in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Kituku. I have handled, like I have said, 2 election disputes, and they were election offenses. And there were serious election offenses that were the results of which were being awaited by the Supreme Court so that they can make a determination on a gubernatorial issue. And in the process of going through this election dispute that I handled, I was able to find gaps in the IEBC processes. For example, it was evident to me that those people who were charged before me, some of whom were IEBC officials, had one or two of them had been charged because they had forgotten and put every document inside the ballot box, so the ballot box could not be opened. There are documents that they are not supposed to put in the ballot box. So some had placed everything in the ballot box, and that raised suspicion that this ballot box is needed now to be reopened so that those things could be removed. And the suspicion on the candidate that lost was that this was intentional, and that there was stuffing of ballots, so that there was no scrutiny of the unused ballot papers. I think from here I was able to find out that fatigue is a critical issue that affects election processes, and somehow IEBC as an institution has to create a policy on how they relate to this issue of fatigue during the electioneering process. Secondly, like I said, I was selected as one of the trainers by the Judiciary Committee on Elections to train my colleagues, and through a team we were able to train our colleagues in the preparedness for election. when I was Secretary General of the Kenya Magistrate and Judges Association, this was between the year 2009 and 2013. And in the year 2009, there was a petition. There were petitions that were ongoing from the 2007 election cycle. And from this cycle, we were able to note that one of our judges, Justice now President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Musinga, was able to handle a petition in Kisii within 6 months. And then we said, if it can be done, then it's something that we are able now to create the timelines for it and then make proposals for it. So this is how, as a Kenya Magistrate and Judges Association, we are now able to now drive the effort that our colleagues and every one of us is able to conclude election petitions within 6 months. Secondly, I forgot to mention that I was representing the judiciary during the writing of the Constitution. The Committee of Experts needed to consult with a group called the Reference Group, which incorporated professional bodies and other bodies of interest to the country, like TSC and others. So, Kenya National Union of Teachers and others. And in this process, when writing this constitution and those aspects on the election, I was able to make the contribution, having gone back to my electorate, which is the Kenya Magistrate and Judges Association, and finding out their views on how the election process should be and whether processes can be concluded within certain timelines. And I think that is the contribution I have made, and possibly now it's my opportunity to make even bigger contribution. Thank you, Madam Chair.
What is that you call bigger contribution?
There are bigger contributions to be made in this institution, in the sense that there are recommendations that were made by the Supreme Court in the last election cycle, and part of that is concerning timelines, how we are able now to negotiate these timelines and create greater period. Because when we were writing the first Supreme Court rules, election rules, to try and balance these timelines of 14 days was very difficult. How then are we going to give parties time to file their documents within which the time frame for filing documents, and ensuring that by the time the petition is ripe for hearing, there is sufficient time. And you would see that the Supreme Court is always caught up by time. That's why they have to hear cases late into the night. And we are all glued, and I think the tension in the country is even much there's gripping and much more difficult. Of course, there are those who enjoy the sessions, but I think it's important that the Supreme Court is given sufficient time. So one of those would be that timeline. The second one would be the corporate governance of the IEBC, how we are able now to ensure that it has a face for itself, that it's able to have internal processes that are able to deal with internal issues, and also to create better ways of doing business as IEBC in terms commissioners relate with each other, how the commission relates with staff, how the players within the sector, that, and then how does the commission then relate with major and the.
Thank you, Madam Koki. Your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Lorot.
Good morning, Madam Koki.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Today. The Kriegler report made some recommendations the IEBC in Kenya. I would like a question related. First, were the just that are strength, if you believe that IEBC requires
the report also, one of them was on the IEBC captured it on its own before the Constitution. It must have a separate electoral laws into one, and then also it IEBC and whether it will their business through community, that type of business, so that now you have elections, about reduction of stricter timelines of timelines. They talked about having a media strategy. It's not just because the election, so that Kriegler's committee were to review, and then there was a shut on other media houses, and I contribute us to what we saw as the 2007 election.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
I'd like to ask to kindly ask his questions.
Thank you. And again, good morning, Honorable. Now, in the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee, reviewing the Auditor General's report, observed that there were instances of in the functions of the CEO, Chairman of IEBC. And it went on to say that mainly on procurement matters, especially procurement of KIMS kits and other election materials. You are aware that just I think a few weeks or last month, IEBC requested for a budget of 62 billion to procure and conduct elections for 2027. As the chair of IEBC, this position, how do you ensure that there is transparency in the operations and procurement of IEBC? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Firstly, I think this is what the Supreme Court talked about, corporate governance of the IEBC, having defined and definitive roles for chairman, the commissions, how they relate with the CEO alongside other members of staff. Structured, the IEBC is that the CEO is the accounting officer, and therefore IEBC does the procurement through what is called the best practices for procurement is to do procurement through committees that are set up within the IEBC and are gazetted for that purpose internally, or either gazetted or internally circulated by the accounting office. First, as chairman, my responsibility, and I think also of other commissioners, is policy oversight and policy oversight and strategy. As to the day-to-day and actual running, that should be done by those who are tasked with the functions of pushing everything. So as chairman, we receive recommendations, so we approve what strategic guidelines are offered by the technocrats within the IEBC, because we will not all be technocrats or have the know-how on every bit and aspect of the electioneering process. So I think first and foremost is that to reduce this issue of conflict between chair and CEO on specific things like procurement, the only thing we give will be oversight and also directions that this is the type of things we need, this is how to be procured, but the participation of the chair in the procurement process, I think, would be faulty and wrong within the procurement laws. The chair can only give directions so that the CEO and others are able to function. This is what is expected of an institution, so that we have institutional framework where it functions with directions from the policy and oversight.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'll ask Evans Misati to ask some questions.
Thanks so much, Mr. Lorot. Now, on the same forum on the issues of IEBC, the chairperson and the secretariat, you have said that the commissioners have to provide oversight and directions, but you realize that the general public recognizes and the buck stops are the commissioners. But the people are conducting the actual operations at the Secretariat. So in your own view, what do you think should be done to make sure that the people, the buck stops are them, they have the control as much as we have that oversight and directions? So how do you divine the working relationship, assuming you are given this position as the chair? How will you divine the relations, or what structures will you implement to ensure that that is done?
Thank you, Mr. Misati. You have correctly pointed out that we give the public looks at us as the ones who we are the face of the commission, and I think that should not stop. The face of the institution should be represented by the chair and the commissioners. That should not stop, because that is the face of the institution. But the institution functions through the Secretariat. They are what we call support services. So what happens is that it is through creating defined roles. We have to go back. We have to go back. But if I'm appointed, if the committee, the panel recommends that I become chair, one of the first things on the tray would be to ensure that these roles are clearly defined, and we get into the recommendations by the Supreme Court that we have clear guidelines on corporate governance. I'm sure there are documents by IEBC. I'm sure they have not been sleeping. They have been preparing these documents is to look at what has been happening and where there is gaps, how to now improve them. But the communication of everything about the commission should be left now to the chair, so that if there are issues that are for communication, the chair can delegate this function. But for communication of serious aspects of the commission should be left so that the public is aware we are procuring. When we say we are procuring, it's not that the chair is procuring. It is the commission that is procuring through various committees. You would have perhaps a chair of that committee for procurement would be a commissioner who is well versed in aspects of procurement or public finance. And therefore, when they are making the recommendations through their panel papers to the commission, it comes to us, and then we approve, or we make changes, or we say these are issues we now need to go and negotiate with finance so that there is disbursement of funds. And I think that is how a proper system works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Misati.
In answering that question, you talked about various committees. Do you want to speak about those committees, whether they are existing or the ones that you think you come up with as a chair?
I think there would be critical committees. I think I can't speak about the ones that are there or not, because I'm not sure at the moment what exists in the infrastructure of IEBC as committees. That would require insider information on the operations of the IEBC. But I think the best way would be to approach issues through committees. I think the ones that just come right into my mind would be a finance committee, a committee on legal, a committee on voter education, a committee on voter education and registration if it is to be merged, but if it is to be separated because of the critical areas that each of them faces. I think also a committee on media and outreach and communication, and then a committee on monitoring and evaluation and planning. Monitoring, evaluation and planning. Those are critical committees that should be there in every institution.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I'll ask Ms. Fatuma Saman to interact with you briefly.
Good morning, Mr. Lorot.
Good morning, Fatuma.
Stakeholder engagement is a critical component of successful electoral process, and particularly to position the IEBC as an impartial arbiter. So would you tell us what experiences you think you'd be able to bring on board that can help ensure that that component is taken care of?
Thank you, Fatma. Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention, and I think it was a very serious oversight, that I have been the chair of the Court Users Committee, National Steering Committee. from its inception up to the year 2022, when the National Council on Administration of Justice decided that that position ought to be handled. I think they made certain changes within their structures, and that position now needed to be handled by a judge. So I was replaced by my Lord Justice Mabea. But I have been chair since its inception, and court user committee is about stakeholder engagement. It's about, first of all, mapping out the stakeholders and having clear outcomes. In this position as court user, as a chair, national chair of the court user committees, first it was something that was achieved through the Kenya Magistrates and Judges Association, so that I don't take credit for the fact that I became the first chair by default. But we were the institution of memory of how the institution of the judiciary operates. We realize the judiciary is not alone. When we get the flack for things that are going wrong, sometimes it's not ours. It is because certain stakeholders and critical partners and actors within the justice chain don't operate properly. So stakeholder engagement is actually my greatest strength. We'll be able to map out who are our clear and direct stakeholders, right from from where we source our mandate and funding, and ensuring that we have representation from all sectors in the electoral players. This also includes having direct links with the strategic groups, particularly those special groups like persons with disability, persons with women and gender, not just women. It's about gender, to have a gender reflection, having involvement of the youth. And now that this country has a huge youth purge, I think it's important for us to have that type of stakeholder, and also now have also stakeholders from voter educators, have stakeholders from observer missions, observers, both local, international, and sometimes individual, and then also have stakeholders from those who provide services to us. These are critical. Those will be providing services to the IEBC. That will even include the legal service providers, those who will be doing the printing, not necessarily those who will be doing the printing, but from where we will now be able to obtain our materials and day-to-day running and operations. So mapping out the stakeholders and reflecting on them, on their impact and our involvement with them. So it's very critical.
Well, thank you very much.
And thank you for the question, Madam.
How will you structure your engagement with stakeholders?
I have had a glimpse of the IEBC stakeholder engagement operation plan, and I think they are on the right track, in the sense that we have the identifying. First of all, it's identifying stakeholders from the processes of the mandate of the IEBC, and the mandate of IEBC, besides election, also includes the boundaries and delimitation. So we structured from pre-election and during the election and after the election. So it's important for us to structure them along those lines, so that we don't have just stakeholders joining, but they are of no relevance at that particular time. So pre-election, one of the critical areas I think will be like for example, let me take an example of the judiciary as a critical stakeholder of the IEBC, is to prop up judges and magistrates and prepare them, and so that they are able to be prepared for the election processes as they come. One, we have pre-election, we have election offences, we have cases that may come earlier in time, and then prepare them on the laws. And then critical aspect also would be what laws are available. Having a parliament as a critical stakeholder, and how you engage with them on that. So it's just structuring them around pre, during, after elections, and then also on the services.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the Honorable Member Nicodemus Bore to also engage you currently.
Thank you very much, Honorable Larot. I've seen you have a long span of service at the judicial service, and we would like to know whether you have had an experience of conflict on ethical issues, and how you have managed to handle it during your time of service.
Thank you very much. It is reported when I appeared before the Judges and Magistrates Vetting Board, I reported, and I think I even had the judgment then, An advocate, I was handling a simple matter, I think, when I was in Milimani Commercial Court, and I think an advocate approached me in my chambers and said that he has been sent by his client, and I did not let him speak. I told him it was pending ruling before me the next day, so I asked him that he appears in court the next day, so that I read the ruling. He didn't appear, I forced him to appear, and in my ruling I specifically mentioned that he had approached, and the most interesting part is that his client won the matter, and one of the penalties I gave the client was I did not award costs to the client because of that infringement, and I reported the matter to the Law Society of Kenya. So I'm very strict about my integrity. I think in my career I have a very good wife. One of the things she has told me is that I should never come home with corrupt money, because that will affect my children and everybody else.
A second question would be, having been, from what I've seen from your CV,
yes,
you're a chief magistrate.
Yes.
And there must be cases that are political in nature. And is there a time that we have had political pressure on or social or financial that could compromise your judicial decisions?
No, I think the clear cases of this nature that you mentioned happened to me when I was in Machakos. I handled a very contentious case involving the procurement, which was the first procurement by the county government immediately after the transition authority, and I think the county government procured second-hand vehicles, and through processes that also involve the Commission on Administrative Justice and others, and the EACC, they charged certain individuals before me, and I just handled it as a normal case. You would see the information in the papers appearing every time, but it is an ordinary case that is before me. I'm supposed to make the determination based on the law and everything that comes before me. This is the type of person that I am, and this is the type of person that I'm presenting before this panel.
Thank you very much.
Professor Adam Solo, kindly would you also ask some questions?
Thank you, Chair. Both in your oral presentation and from your CV, it is clear that you served as a commissioner of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the ethnic clashes in the Tana North, Tana River, and Tana Delta districts. And you did tell us how you completed that work under your chair. However, what you didn't tell us is whether the report brought a lasting solution to the conflict that you are addressing. Maybe you can take an opportunity to tell us whether that conflict continues. The reason why I ask this is because the body that you ask to chair is one that needs to resolve perennial challenges, as you clearly stated in your opening remarks, and you are seeking to sit at its apex. Therefore, the country and the panel is looking at when you are given an opportunity to give a lasting solution. Did that solution come, or there are still clashes? And if you are given this job, what assurance do you give that sitting at the helm, not just as a commissioner like in the other one, you'll bring that sanity in our electoral process?
Thank you, Daktari, for that. I want to start by saying that we delivered our report to His Excellency the President. The President who had appointed us at the time we were delivering our report had already left office, and so we delivered to the new President, which was His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. by the time we were delivering the report, we looked at, there were 3 tiers of issues that we looked at from the Tana Commission. I think I can sum up as 3, but there may have been more. The first one was with respect to the ethnic clashes, the threshold of genocide, or whether they met these variant thresholds of because there was displacement, there was murder, there was clear organization, there was all those things that fitted this billing. Then the next stage that we looked at were the perpetrators known. Fortunately, we had witnesses who testified before us, and from there we were able now to involve the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to act on them, and charges were preferred. In fact, from our report, we had a separate report on those to be charged from the recommendations of the Commission. And those who are charged, the cases were ongoing in both Garsen and Malindi High Courts. And in some instances, I think for those that occasioned gender-based violence, those who are charged before the Garsen Court, that was the first recommendation that we made. And I think in the other recommendation was about economic activity, because what were the triggers of this violence? The triggers, we noted the triggers were related to resource conflict. They were also triggered by just inter-ethnic clash. There were communities that had never remarried. They had never intermarried in that area since time immemorial, and in fact they used to live separate. We will find this is the village of this particular community. I don't want to name them, and this other community. Whether our report succeeded is you can see one of the efforts that we tried to look at was the land structure and tenure in Tana, and one of those issues were resolved, I think, by placing some of the land into agricultural for purposes of ensuring feeding of the country. One of the achievements we can say from our report was when we said they could Tana River can actually feed this nation, and if it is possible for the land tenure system to be looked at fully, then it can work. As to whether it was implemented, the implementing authority was the executive. So I'm not sure, because I didn't follow up. I went back to my court work immediately after that, but I should think that from my observation, there are some changes. Yet I can see there are returns of there's return of some of this chaos, and from this that is why that's what actually pushed me to go and study international conflict management as a master's program, and actually to just be able to and that's what has taken a bit of time, because I'm also looking at myself as an informant in my own research paper. So I'm gathering that information for purposes of ensuring that this is protected and preserved, and for future purposes of enabling the commission, institutions such as the Commission, to see that there is an interrelationship between resources and election and electioneering malpractices.
Thank you. You told us that you have been in service 23 years and counting. If we were to make you chair, what would you like to be remembered for in the judicial service on your professional conduct? How would you, if you were to succeed and now you go to the Commission?
I think my colleagues on the bench I would like them to they would respect me. I would like to be remembered as a person who was respected by my colleagues and my peers, and I think that is sufficient for me, because that was a service, and I think I needed to be respected. I think I am respected by majority of my colleagues on the bench, and I have cut out a career that has spanned all these years with service and honor.
Thank you, Chair.
Have you ever sought to be promoted to the higher court?
Yes.
And what experience have you had there?
I applied to be promoted to be a judge. I went through an interview. There was no complaint on my part. I went through a process of interview, but the selection was for the Judicial Service Commission to make. I was not one of those selected at the time. And I think that's all I can say. I was not selected at the time. I have applied once.
Thank you. FCPA, tell me kindly.
Thank you, Chair. Still on areas of leadership and integrity. Lorot, you've confirmed to us that you are a serving Chief Magistrate.
Yes.
Thank you. Under Article 260, judges and magistrates are listed as state officers. In our advert that we did put, for which you did your application, we indicated that arising from Article 88(2), people who hold state office are not eligible for appointment. Being a judicial officer, what is your take? Thank you.
I noted that on the advert, and I also noted that there are instances where, because I'm serving state officer, I'm coming for an interview, I will resign from my position if the panel were to appoint me, and I think that is the position I took. I took precedence in what has happened before when I think the first instance of such a case was the late Nkaiseri being a member of Parliament, and as a state officer was appointed as a cabinet secretary. It has happened before. Even now we have two. We have the former MP for Ugunja and the former MP for Gwasi, who are both state officers when they were members of Parliament, and they were selected to join the cabinet secretaries, to be cabinet secretaries, which are also state officers. So there is precedent that I'm not just coming here because I'm a state officer. I'm coming here because I'm coming for a job interview for a state office. My take also on that is that it wishes to remove persons who are not. Let me just finish with what I just said earlier. Yes, I think there is precedent for me. What happened in the past.
Thank you very much. So you think there is no conflict between who you are and what you are seeking to do?
I do not think there is any conflict.
Okay, thank you. And you will be ready to resign, that's what you're saying?
Yes, I will be ready and willing to resign instantly, once confirmed.
Thank you. Professor Adams, do you have some other questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, Bwana Lorot, you gave us a history that as a minor, you started becoming interested in elections, the Mlolongo, the famous or infamous Mlolongo in 1988. So I'll just ask you a general question, because you seek to lead the IEBC, and therefore I believe you are very much aware of the electoral map of this country. How many constituencies are in Kiambu County?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I know there is Githunguri constituency, let me number them. There is Githunguri, there is Kiamba, there is Lare, there is Kikuyu, there is Thika, there is Ruiru, there is Gatundu, the two Gatundus, Gatundu North and Gatundu South. I should think this would be it. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There should be about 8, if not, if maybe more, but these 8 I can remember them.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Koki, do you have a follow-up question?
No, Chair, thank you. Okay.
Okay, and how many wards in Baringo, since that is home?
I'm from the lower part of Baringo. I'm from Mogotio, and I cannot hazard. I know that there are 3 wards in Mogotio constituency, but I cannot hazard the number of wards in the entire Baringo. But if we were to look at the 6 constituencies, then it should be something in the region of 18 to 20.
Okay, thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Within the context of non-governmental organizations, and in particular the the international ICJ, the International Commission of Jurists, of which I was an active member, and which the Kenyan section I chaired for a while. The focus on rule of law and the promotion of democracy. I also was invited by the late Senior Counsel Grace Githu to join her together with some other members to found an NGO called the Institute for Education in Democracy, where I was a member, and at some point I chaired the IED. I was, allow me to say, I was privileged to work with one of the panelists, Dr. Koki Muli. I learned a lot in that context on everything that surrounds elections, electoral processes, electoral reforms. It gave me a good insight. I would never pretend that, like Dr. Muli, I didn't become an expert, but I got a deep insight, and that helped me to understand the processes and to develop also an interest in the whole electoral process and the management of elections. So, Mr. Chair, members of the panel, I go back then to beginning of 2011. I, with 8 other colleagues, we served as members of the Commission for the implementation of the Constitution. Basically, I can say because that was a commission that had just been established as a transitional mechanism by the Constitution, did it from scratch. I thank God that I had a good team, and I think by and large, when we look back, we think we did a decent job at the Commission in terms of mainly working with the other mandated bodies like the Attorney General, Parliament, and the various stakeholders to write laws to implement the 2010 Constitution. And in that process, I feel that my passion for the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which passion had started in the campaign to get a new constitution, I feel that in those 5 years my passion grew even higher, and that passion of that constitution, Mr. Chairman, members of the panel, continues to date. So not to take too long, we served until the end of 2015 when the term of the commission came to an end. After I left CIC, after a small break, I took a brief but unsuccessful excursion into elective politics, but it was a good experience. It helped me also to understand politics at a more ground-based level. In February of 2018, I was appointed to be a judge of the East African Court of Justice, an appointment which took effect from the 1st of July of 2018. I served on that court for a period of 5.5 years. The term was, my term was for 7 years, but for reasons which, if the panel wishes me to explain, I will explain. I did not finish the 7 years. I left in January of 2024 and came back to Kenya because the court is based in Arusha, Tanzania. And I came back to do my own private things, a little bit of consultancy, a little bit of writing, a little bit of studying. In the meantime, soon after I came back, I was appointed to chair the council of the Kenya School of Government, where I still am as chair of the council. Of course, I think it's probably necessary to state that if I were to find favor with this panel, as well as the appointing authority, then obviously to comply with the law, I would, before appointment, relinquish that position. Mr. Chairman, I maybe will pause there in terms of who I am and await further questions from you and the panel.
Just as a follow-up of that introduction,
yes,
it would be nice for you to highlight one or two successes that you had with CIC.
Yes.
And what you think are regrets
yes.
from that stint that you had
yes.
That follows us up to now.
Yes.
The laws that you think you ought to have done and you didn't do, and the country may be suffering from that failure or absence of those laws.
Thank you, Chairman. Most of the laws that the Constitution required to be enacted were actually enacted. We worked well with the Attorney General. We worked well with the Kenya Law Reform Commission and the various government departments where the laws originated from. So what I would say, while we wrote most of these laws, I think I can honestly say that there are one or two of them, because of the process where these laws eventually had to pass through cabinet and then be taken to the National Assembly so that they could be enacted. I do have one or two that personally, and I think most of my colleagues felt that collectively, not just CIC, collectively, including those bodies that I have mentioned, we probably fell short of the mark. Examples, for example, the laws to implement Chapter 6 of the Constitution were, in our view, between leaving CIC and the time that they got to Parliament or were enacted in Parliament. In our view, CIC were quite significantly watered down. But then you see it's Parliament that had and still has the constitutional mandate to actually legislate. There are other laws we passed and which faced some resistance and indeed maybe even up to date, maybe because of a lack of will. The best example I can give, which actually touches on the delivery of IEBC's mandate, would be the campaign finance law, which, of course, initially Parliament suspended its effect. Eventually it was passed. There has been an issue with regulations to give effect to that. I'm still hopeful that, whoever goes to the commission at IEBC, because this is an important part of the electoral process, can actually push and negotiate with the executive, with parliament, with all stakeholders, so that law, so many years down the line, is actually passed, so that the intent of the Constitution is achieved.
So we can blame you for that. Can we also blame you for 2/3 gender rule and referendum laws, their absence?
You can probably ask my colleagues and I to share some blame on, say, like the referendum law. But Chairman and members of the panel, without running away, the laws were not initiated by CIC. The laws were initiated by the executive. So if a law was not initiated by the executive, there is very little that as CIC we could do. What I would more readily accept blame for, and I think it's just a question of benefit of hindsight, there are laws when we look back, including even the Elections Act, but that's just a question of hindsight is always 2020, and one of the unfortunate, regrettable things was that Parliament had the option to extend the life of the Commission, and we even, as commissioners at that time, offered to Parliament that, look, if there is an issue with the commissioners, us, we are ready to, because our term is coming to an end, but we think that you should do one of two things. Either extend the mandate of CIC, which the Constitution gives you the power to do, or if you don't want to extend the mandate of CIC, then identify another body and find a way of giving it a constitutional underpinning. And here we were probably looking at something like the Kenya Law Reform Commission, because it would have been important to have a body that continued to review the laws and look at anything that may have fallen through the process. And as I say, hindsight is always perfect vision. And if that had happened, I dare say that some of the laws now, not just around the elections, but generally, which have issues, those issues would have been probably addressed by now.
Fair enough. My final question on the introduction is, this is a very onerous position you're asking for. You resigned from a judicial position that does not have a similar pressure like this. Are we going to have our chairman resign before end of day?
Chair and members of the panel, not at all. Allow me to explain in a couple of minutes why I resigned from the East African Court of Justice. The East African Court of Justice is established as the judicial organ of the East African community. It's an ad hoc court, means it's not full-time, and it operates to a certain calendar. I think it is not unfair for me to say, because I think it's a matter of public notoriety, that the East African community for the last few years has struggled almost to the point of becoming dysfunctional. So that you had a situation where you have an ad hoc court with a calendar, 4 sessions in a year. Each session, as it approaches, is cancelled because there are financial issues within the community. And when this happened for practically the whole of 2023, I said to myself, I'm not being fair to myself. I'm not being fair to the people of East Africa, because all this time, Chair and members of the panel, every month I am earning $2,000 for doing nothing, because it's called the intersessional something that you get paid every month. So I thought long and hard, and I decided that I was not adding value to the people of East Africa by remaining in a court which is hardly operating. So I then took the step of bringing my concerns to the appointing authority, who the President of the Republic of Kenya, and saying, this is not working. I really would appreciate if I can get the opportunity to resign and do other things.
Enough.
And that's why. So the answer to your question is I do not anticipate those sort of problems if you are to give me the chance to be chair of the commission, so the issue wouldn't arise.
So if Parliament doesn't approve budgets that you present, will you be pushed to do?
You see, Chairperson, I do not foresee a day when the commission will actually grind to zero, not able to operate at all. What could happen if there are delays or budget cuts and so on is that there are certain parts of the mandate which, but a day, I do not anticipate a day when Parliament will completely say there is no, which is what was happening in Arusha. There is no money, and it wasn't so much about the money. It was a question of what then am I doing here? You see, most of my colleagues, the judges of the East African Court of Justice, are also judges in the national court, their respective national courts. So if you put off the session, it's a bit inconvenient, but they just go on. There is a service they're delivering in the national courts. For those of us who are not engaged at the national level, but just went there on that ad hoc basis, I felt that it was not right to continue, especially, as I say, when you're continuing to earn an intersessional allowance and you're doing nothing.
Thank you very much. Madam Linda, please. Kindly.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable Justice Nyachai, the IEBC Commission constitutes of different professionals from different backgrounds, your background being the legal field. But the Act itself envisages a composition of a commission that has very diverse skills and disciplines. And save for law, which is your professional background, what other skills and disciplines do you bring into this commission as a chairperson?
Thank you. I think I would answer that at 2 levels. In terms of skills and disciplines, my formal qualification is law. I have taken it upon myself and developed over a period of time. I have developed an interest in governance, and actually I am a student
never heard a music so sweet.
Is radical and transformative relative to the previous constitution. There was also plenty of political pressure from everywhere, at times from Parliament, at times from the executive. I feel that we were able to stay on the straight and narrow. So, speaking for myself, I believe that is an important skill to be able to navigate those pressures while not compromising on what it is that the mandate is. I think I also feel I would bring into the commission people skills, particularly with the commission itself, so that because I visualize on day one you have a commission of 7 people. They may or may not even have ever seen each other. They are from different backgrounds, possibly with different orientations, different personalities. So I would see the role of the chair, one of the most important roles of the chair, which I believe my experience with CIC stands me in good stead, is how do you manage this kind of scenario? People with different orientation, people with different personalities. I feel that mainly because if you ask me about my personality, I people have told me this and I believe it to be true. One of the gifts God gave me is to listen. And I think it's very important when you're dealing in that kind of scenario to listen. And that way you are able to manage people a little better. So I would say the people skills, I would say the courage to do that which is right, irrespective. And I have thought about these things. A close friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, a professional colleague, when I told him I am applying for this job, he told me, my brother, are you sure you want to do that? I asked, oh, many people have asked me that question. I said, yes. He told me why. I asked him why. He told me, you know, you should be ready to either lose your life or your integrity. That's exactly the words that he used. I told him, no, I do not intend to lose my life in serving the people of Kenya as chair or commissioner of IEBC, and I have no intention at any point of compromising on integrity. And I think it's defeatist. So to answer your question, I believe I have the courage that I have no illusions about how difficult this job is. But then at the same time, I have no hesitation in believing that I can do it.
That's okay, Justice. I want you to confirm to this panel.
Yes.
If it is true what Dr. Elizabeth Muli says about you.
Yes.
She's one of your referees.
Yes.
That you possess exceptional stakeholder management and conflict resolution skills. Because I did not hear you say that you possess those skills. But she says that in her recommendation letter. Is it true?
It is true. I guess maybe I did not say everything that I would, or maybe I did not put it the way that Dr. Muli has put it in that reference, because we dealt, as I said earlier, we dealt with diverse stakeholders and people who had different interests, and one of the common denominators was that most were resistant to change. But we managed. I mean, when, you know, we were dealing with some institutions that were fairly rigid traditionally, but we felt that the Constitution required certain changes in the law that manages those institutions. But we had long negotiations and you know, these are not people you can just talk down to. You have to convince them, persuade them, and by and large, we succeeded. But let me say this. Dr. Muli is overly kind to me, because the truth of the matter is we were able to do that because we worked together as a team. I wouldn't say that happened because, and only because Charles Nyachai had those skills. It happened because we had a team which could work together, which could share how to manage, whether it is conflict or different ideas from stakeholders that we are dealing with. We were able to do that together as a team.
I think that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Thank you. I will invite Karo Kituku to engage you with some questions.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Nyachai, you'll allow me to ask like 3 questions or 2 questions. The Constitution at Article 86 contemplates the use of a voting method that is accurate, verifiable, simple, transparent, and accountable. In the 2013 elections, 2017 and 2022, the IEBC deployed technology. In your view, does the technology that the IEBC deployed meet these constitutional threshold or requirement? Was it verifiable? And you can use examples to explain your answer.
Okay, I would say that this has happened incrementally. And the real 2013 years, but I think the real technology was 2017. My understanding of why the first election in 2017 was annulled was on the question of verifiability. Because the Supreme Court took the view that the technology that was used, and in particular, the uploading of results from the polling station to the National Tallying Center, and now I'm talking about the presidential election, because that's really where the problems that IEBC has been having about elections. That has been the main, the presidential election, and the Supreme Court was quite clear that we cannot verify this which the presiding officer basically was sending a text, their own text, and that's why the Supreme Court required the uploading and the actual transmitting of what is known as Form 34A. That's basically, apart from a few other, maybe, that's, in my understanding, what actually killed that first election. And that being the case, I would say that, and I think the Supreme Court also took the view that 2022 was a significant improvement, and on the what remains to be done, in my view, has more to do not so much with the fact that the election may not be verifiable, but it has more to do with the ordinary Kenyan remaining persuaded that it is verifiable. If you read my application, my letter of application, I used the phrase that where IEBC wants and needs to be is where IEBC, like Caesar's wife, must be above suspicion. Because as long as what is being done leaves any question marks in the electorate, in the people of Kenya, then IEBC has fallen short. I think IEBC, and to this extent, I agree with the Supreme Court. They did, relative to the previous two elections, I think they did a relatively good job. There are, of course, things that the Supreme Court pointed out which could be done better. But all said and done, the elephant in the room is that question of what is it that needs to be done, especially with the use of technology, so that the Kenyan voter, the electorate, the Wanjiko, the Mora, the Amina, actually is persuaded that yes, even if we lost this, we are not quarreling with the electoral management body. The reasons lie elsewhere.
Okay. So just following up on what you're saying, that the technology that the IEBC has deployed over the various electoral cycles has been progressive. So apart from the KIMS kit, which is the technology that IEBC basically deploys, what other areas can the technology be deployed to enhance the elections management in Kenya?
Again, you'll allow me to go. Sorry, you'll allow me to go back to the fundamental question, what I've called the elephant in the room, so that we are looking at the trust deficit that exists between the people of Kenya and the whole system, including IEBC. How do we narrow and possibly even do away with that? So my answer to that question is even around the Kim skit. If I was or tomorrow I find myself in the boardroom of IEBC with commissioners, I would be saying, what is it that the technology we have, what is it that can additionally be done so that the people of Kenya actually feel that they have no reservations? IBC, I believe there's an ongoing discussion between IBC and of course like the National Treasury and those who provide money about whether or not the technology, especially the Kim skits, whether they are obsolete. IBC takes a position, I believe, that they are now obsolete. So that's an issue that needs to be resolved. I am aware that one of the things because currently what the Kim skit does, as I'm sure you members of the panel know, is the starting with the registration of voters, then the registration of candidates, then the identification at the polling station of the voter, and finally, which is the most problematic, the transmission, especially of the presidential result from there. So, and in the process of answering the question, I would want to ask, if I'm in the commission and just sat there, I would want to find out from the technology people, for example, how can technology carry the voter with IEBC from the time they vote up to the time results are announced? For example, the issue of technology keeping the voters, if I vote, for example, if I normally vote at a polling station called Kisii Primary School, when I vote there and leave the station, if at the close of the voting I got a message that tells me in your polling station X number of people voted, this is when they have done the counting, these are the results, the ones that are being announced, pinned to the door and transmitted and then physically taken. If that was done, I venture, and technology helped the voter to get that, I venture to suggest that a Kenyan who was so minded could actually do the arithmetic themselves. So by the time IEBC is announcing the result, they are able to, if they are so minded, to do that arithmetic, whether through their political parties or not. So I think what I would be asking, not being a technology person myself, my question will still remain what I would be asking the technology people. What is it additional that we can do the voter to feel that there's nothing going on wrong. There's nothing they've missed. Yeah.
My last question. So the law and there are instances that the technology does fail.
Yes.
It's technology, it can fail. So the law envisages that IBC should contemplate having a complementary system. Two questions. What is this complementary system? And the second question, how would you ensure that that complementary system remains credible, transparent, verifiable, accurate, and accountable?
Okay, the first question.
Put on your mic, Justice.
I'm sorry, Chair. The first question, what is this alternative? This was the subject of litigation. Of course, having another technologically based complementary system may not be such a bright idea because they could both fail. So the complementary system that IEBC is using really now is the physical getting the information. This is at the polling station, getting the information physically from the register. But that it's complementary, but, and this now is to answer your second question, it may not be ideal because you go back to the reason that we went to technology in the first place. So as at now, me, who is not a technology person, I have not yet engaged with an understanding of what a complementary system that does not rely on the register would do.
So maybe to help you, this complementary system can be manual in the sense that the voter identification is manual, it's outside the technology. There is a physical counting, the physical tallying of the form 34, that for A, that for B, that for C, and the handwritten transmission or the physical transmission of the forms to the National Tallying Center. This is in regard maybe to the presidential. Yeah. So that is maybe what could be manually. So we are asking, given now those steps that are being taken manually without the help of technology, if it becomes successful and you are the chairperson of the IBC, how would you ensure that those processes meet the constitutional threshold that is established in Article 86 in regard to the system being verifiable, accurate, accountable, transparent?
Let me say this. I think it would be, in the absence of technology, it becomes more difficult to ensure that it is verifiable. So I think one then would be looking at how do you safeguard, for example, the journey, the physical journey that that Form 34A takes to become 34B and then eventually get to the National Tallying Center. I also think that participants, not to run away from the responsibility of IEBC to deliver an election that is verifiable, credible, and transparent. The players in the political parties, the candidates, I think need to play a bigger role in terms of protecting that process, and that requires, I think, engagement between IEBC and the stakeholders in coming up with an alternative system, which, as I hear you, would be entirely devoid of technology, which of course means that we are going back to where we started.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We are almost halfway through, so be concise in your responses. I want to invite Dr. Koki to ask some questions.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Justice Nyachae, you mentioned that you have been in the democratization movement in Kenya, and indeed it is true, we have worked together. My question is, one of the issues that has really concerned democracy, has hampered democracy in Kenya, is and has contributed to divisive politics, is a system of first past the post, or what we have in Kenya, that leads to results that the winning candidate takes all, where the winner takes all. And one of the concerns that, of course, there are many ideas that have been advanced on how to improve the democracy and the electoral landscape by introducing different types of electoral systems. For example, mixed member proportional representation, etc., which addresses some of these divisive elections. Why do you think that has not succeeded in Kenya, and you have been involved in this process for that long? That's the first question.
My own view is that I think there are probably several reasons which pertain to our type of politics, which sadly is not always issue-based, and that's why even political parties to actually achieve issue-based political parties has been a challenge, and that's why, for example, proportional representation may not work, because you have a mindset that want our own representative in this particular locality or in this particular community, who we see as our representative. It's not about issues. That, I think, is a reality. But let me say this. Those who, in the democratization process, as you will recall, Dr. Muli, we tended to deal with much more basic things, and we really didn't get at that time to the stage where we are looking at, for example, alternative kinds of elections. I always ask, whenever I hear that argument, I always ask myself, why does first past the post work in very many other systems, but it's a challenge? It's a challenge in Kenya. The people of Kenya, I think, promulgated a constitution as they saw fit, how they wanted to be governed, and perhaps if and our politics tend to revolve around individuals. Perhaps a solution would be to have a system where, yes, first past the post, for example, if you're talking about a presidential election, but then you have individuals who have huge followings, and when they lose an election, whichever way they lose an election, their followers just feel then we are done for. If our person did not get it, then we are done for. So to me, not being pessimistic, but I wouldn't start with trying to change the system so that we have, proportional representation, which I personally favor. I would begin it from the pragmatic perspective of, is there a way that we can ensure that participants in an election at the end of that process are not feeling excluded from the body politic?
Thank you. Justice Nyachai, perhaps you can share with the panel some ideas on how we can address this issue in Kenya, this perennial problem of divisive politics, and you know, when at the end of election results where they are not being accepted, and after elections we have those members, you're saying the followers of the losing candidate, the first runners-up, has a lot of votes that have just gone to waste.
Yes.
How do we address that so that we can make Kenyans appreciate and accept the results of the elections?
I think the first thing I would say, Dr. Muli, is that what we were discussing a minute ago, where we want to get to a situation where the people of Kenya have faith in the system, and to the extent that they are more likely to accept the result. I don't want to speak too much, the chair warned me, but let me just give a quick example. I'm not a great football fan, chair, but in 2014, by God's grace, I got an opportunity to go and watch the World Cup final in Rio in Brazil. You know, thousands of people in that stadium, and everybody with very strong views in terms of who they are supporting. At the end of the match, you just had two reactions. Those who won were jubilant. Those who lost left there feeling dejected. But what you didn't have is a scenario of those who lost saying, no, there was something not right here. Of course, there are things like, I forget what they call it, where nowadays there's technology assists to follow some of those things. But the important thing is, how do you, in answer to Dr. Muli's question, how do we get to a situation, and that's the first part, a situation where people have faith in that system. So if they lose, they're just dejected, but they don't cry foul. The second team, the second side of it, I think if we accept as a people that we have this problem that is perennial, where we have difficulties in accepting the results and so on, because of what the consequences are. Because the consequences is that a leader and his or her people feel, oh, if once we are lost, then we are done. We have nothing out of it. Is perhaps to relook at the structure of government so that in the body politic, those who have not won at all levels to be able to form government feel that they are still participating in the body politics. Those are the two suggestions that I would make.
Thank you very much, Justice Nyachai. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I presume that in Brazil there was confidence in the referee.
Chair, there must have been, because I didn't see anybody shouting referee Akwende or things like those. I just saw people jubilating in that particular match. Germany won. I saw people, those who supporting Germany jubilating. The other side, Argentina lost, the crying. But it's just the way you accept that we lost. But nobody challenged the system of how the result was arrived at. That's my point, Chair.
Okay, then we will ask you further questions, since you will be the referee if you get this job.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Justice Nyachai. You are the chair of CIC, which I'm looking at the Constitution here. You are to monitor, facilitate, and oversee the development of legislation and administration procedures required to implement this Constitution. Now, I believe you are part of the Chapter 15, the operationalization of the Chapter 15 commissions, for which CIC was one of them, and particularly IEBC is one of the Chapter 15 commissions. However, in the recent past, in 2014, there was the Senate actually raised concern with regard to conflicts between the Commission or within the Commission. And I think this one was specifically to National Gender and Equality Commission. Equally, in 2015, there was an issue at Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which is also a Chapter 15 commission. And even it went to court. There were investigations that were done. At some point, they were nullified on the basis that there were no commissioners at EACC. We've seen what has been happening at IEBC. 2017, we saw how the former chair, the CEO, saw how some commissioners left, resigned. And coming home to the IPC Act, I was just looking at it, and we've had 10 amendments up to last year. The one that created this election panel was actually the 10th amendment of the IPC Act. So looking at the governance framework of these constitutional commissions and the conflicts that we've seen running across, is there a problem with regard to the governance framework of our constitutional commissions? And is it a constitutional issue? Is it a legal issue? Or it's more of a governance issue? Thank you.
My answer to that would be it's none of the above. The biggest problem is the dynamics of personalities and what is perceived as power play. The one you didn't mention was between the National Land Commission and the Ministry of Lands. I honestly, obviously, like I said earlier on, hindsight is always 2020. There must have been a few things here that when you look back, you say, this we could improve on and this we could improve on. But the basic framework for each of those constitutional commissions, I would still stand by the laws that were put in place. The problem, if we are to be honest with ourselves, is personalities, the dynamics of power play, resistance to change. Classic example would be the conflicts that were there between the National Police Service Commission and the National Police Service itself, the Inspector General and his team. I still don't think the problem was either with the Constitution or with either with the Constitution or the laws made to implement the Constitution. I think it has more to do with a situation where one side or other is resisting change. You know, we must not forget at any point that the 2010 Constitution was and remains a radical document, a transformative document, relative to where we were before. So when you tell a senior police officer, take the IG, and I mean, it's just an example, I'm not accusing the IG of anything, that you are able to do this previously, but now under the constitutional dispensation that we now have, this can only be done this way, or this can be done by another body like the commission. Even when we were writing the KDF Act, for example, it took a lot of energy, particularly by Dr. Muli, Elizabeth Muli, who was in charge of that particular thematic group. It took a lot of energy, negotiation, for the military to understand a concept called civilian oversight, which is in the Constitution. They're not used to it. To their credit, eventually they were able to internalize it. To me, the problem we have been having with the constitutional commissions is not about the Constitution, is not about the laws to implement the Constitution. It's about the power play and resistance to change.
Further to that, the IEBC Act, which if you are successful, you will be responsible for its implementation, was actually amended in 2016. And it is the only one under Chapter 15 commissions that has separated the functions of the commissioners and the Secretariat, unlike all the other Chapter 15. This one under Section 11A has went ahead to separate it. So given your experience and the fact that you've said it's not about the law, it's not about the Constitution, it's about power play, so how will you, if appointed, handle these challenges that have been default to IEBC for the last 10 or so years?
Sorry, which particular one? Which particular challenge?
You see, Section 11,
yes.
2A.
Sets out the...
It is the only
of
all the Chapter 15 where it has clearly separated the roles of the Commission and of the Secretariat, unlike any other Chapter 15. So, given the fact that you say this is about power play, it's not an issue of law. So, assuming you, and if you get this position as the chair of IEBC, how will you ensure that these conflicts, perennial conflicts that have been there at IEBC, which are more of power play, not the law, how will you address them as once appointed? Okay.
I think there are two different levels of conflict. The one that we were talking about in the earlier question is about the commission as an entity and maybe another entity like part of the executive which was dealing with particular issues beforehand. Now you're asking me about within the commission. And if you're asking me about IEBC, if I was privileged to serve as chair of IEBC, I would consider myself lucky, more lucky than the other constitutional commission heads, for the simple reason that I accept that amendment 11A is a very helpful and useful amendment, because you don't then have to have any tug of war about who does what. The bigger problem has been, in my view, with the other external entities. But let me come to IEBC. You know what? Honestly, I think the solution to IEBC, 11A is very good. It helps. But 11A will not solve the problem if the mindset of the respective players, like the commissioners and the the Secretariat, are mentally operating from different perspectives. That amendment is 2016. Yeah. Now, if we just look at the commission, it didn't help in 2022 at Bomas. It was there. You still had this rupture which nobody understands. Yeah. But which, for me, I attribute to more, not about the structure. I attributed more to a problem of personalities and a problem of interests, and again, power play. So the law there, which is very good, Section 11A of the Act is very good. It sets out all this, yeah? But we still have a challenge. Even when I read the Supreme Court judgment for 22, which endeavored to advise the issue of the relationship between the chairperson and the commissioners relative to the chairperson constitutionally being the returning officer for the presidential election. I am persuaded that even with that guidance from the Supreme Court, if the mindset of the people within that commission is wrong or is negative, you will still have it. So maybe I'm going further than the question you asked me, but if I was to find favor in the position that I have applied for, and I was find myself as chair of the commission, I would consider one of my most urgent and major tasks is how to make 7 people every person has come from wherever they have come from, how to turn that into a team which focuses on what the mandate is and how each of them individually can deliver for a collective discharge of the mandate. And for me, as an individual, I consider that my experience at CIC would come stand me in good stead.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Misati Evans to take up some questions.
Thanks so much. Let me call you Charles. That's what I'm used to calling you. Now, from what you have just answered, it will be clear that the issue of personality and the institutional infrastructure is not a problem. Then in your own view, what do you think brings these conflicts as the state currently as it is? Why are we having problems? Because from your presentation or the way you have answered is like the personality issue and the infrastructure is okay.
What I think causes the problem is you have a situation, and again, allow me to refer back to the experience I had at CIC. Remember, CIC was the commission was created by a process which involved the two disparate political groups that had formed the coalition government. If we are to be honest with ourselves, what that meant is that people came there probably from the perspective of a political I have come here by virtue of political coalition X, and I have come here by virtue of political coalition Y. So, from the onset, there was potential for distrust. There was potential for suspicion. So I think there was a need, and I think we succeeded, for the commission to do what needed to do, whether it is bonding, whether it is spending time together, whether it is reassuring each other, whether it is trying to understand each other, whatever it is, so that when we had disagreements in the boardroom, and there were many, yeah, there were disagreements arising from issues that different members had different perspectives. And that way, at least for me as chair, it made my life easier. There are many times we fought very hard in the boardroom, but we arrived at a decision because of that goodwill. And then when we walked out of the boardroom, we presented a position that we all accepted. The challenge, therefore, is how do you overcome, and they're quite natural, the prejudices people have, the suspicions that people come with, and possibly people have different, I hope not, different agenda, but those are the challenges that you know, have to be overcome, so that the commission, you don't have the kind of rupture that you had at Bomas in 2022.
Thanks. As a follow-up question to that, the work of the Secretariat being more of operational, but you realize that the commission is the one which owns up the results of the operations. How will you ensure that you own whatever activities, whatever mission, and whatever activities they do, that you are in charge and you own it? And then the last question: do you think the issue of procurement has any bearing towards the conflicts that happens in IEBC?
And I can honestly say I am not sure, but I have had that said. That's my honest answer. That sometimes there are interests other than the delivery of the mandate. There's a school of thought, for example, that when you had a commission which came in when other commissioners had been there, perhaps there was a feeling that when we were not here, what happened that we missed out on. I think that is the honest truth, but I don't know. Honestly, I can. But having sorry, what was the other than procurement here?
You own the actions of the operations.
Yes. So I think it's a matter of working relationships. And I go back to the whole question of what happened at Bomas in 2022, and we can't run away from it. I mean, it was the low point of the Electoral Commission. When you think about it, the actual physical verification that happens at the National Tallying Center is actually done by the Secretariat under the supervision of the Commission. So really, because it's done by the Secretariat under the supervision of the Commission, you would expect that you wouldn't have that kind of scenario, because the Secretariat, which has been doing the tallying under that supervision, and it's mathematical. We have verified. It may be laborious. It may take time, but it should be purely mathematical. Especially when we remember, it's just verification between from 34A that was transmitted and from 34A that arrived at Bomas. So, when the returning officer, take my constituency again as an example, when the returning officer from Nyaribari Church constituency arrives with his 34B with the attachments of 34A, all that the commission is required to do is to verify that what he has brought, is consistent with what was uploaded and sent to the National Tallying Center. Because in the minor KI case and subsequently, the courts have said what was announced by the presiding officer at Kisii Primary School cannot even be changed by the chairman of the commission or chairperson of the commission. So, when you think about it, the tallying exercise should be an exercise really that is basically mathematical. Because once you tally that what happened at the Kisii Primary School with what was uploaded and sent to the National Tallying Center, multiply that by, is it 47,000 polling stations, it's purely mathematical. So, ideally, that problem that arose in Bomas shouldn't have arisen. I am persuaded that what happened in Bomas had more to do with the personality differences. I wouldn't want to guess what caused the personality differences or whatever, but it had less to do with that mathematical process that is the tallying at Bomas.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Chair. How about you?
I'd like to ask Madam Fatuma to bring in her interventions, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Nyachai, you okay with that?
As I said, they're all my names. You had Mr. Mr. call me Charles. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. In the next election, the youth are going to be the highest percentage. However, they face barriers like disillusionment, apathy. So if you become chair, how would you meaningfully engage them in the electoral processes so that they're able to take care of their political and civil rights?
I think that the answer to that is at several levels. At the most intimate level, of course, if the commission is in place and, for example, starts continuous registration of voters, the chances are that the 500,000 or so people who are going to be employed to do that are going to be young people. That's at one level where they will feel engaged. But in terms of the process itself, because IEBC is required to deliver on a credible election, and that is reflected in both its vision and its mission. Then, if you take the cycle, the electoral cycle, the young people will want to be part of the process right from the stage of registration of them now being forget about them working for IEBC to register voters, but them now making it easy for them to register. This requires voter education, because in the process of voter education, all all stakeholders, including IEBC, must dispel from the notion, from young people and Kenyans generally, the notion that the election is about other people, not about them. And I think the Commission, through voter education, can go a long way in making them feel part of the process. It is not the Commission's responsibility, for example, to deal with identity cards, but the Commission, as part of, as an entity that deals with elections, if I was chair, I would be talking to the executive about how we can help young people to be to have IDs. And there are many challenges. There are many challenges. Some of them on day one, whoever goes to that commission, and they're going to involve young people. Take the by-elections, for example, that are pending. If you take a constituency like Banisa, I think 2 years they have not had representation. In those 2 years, there must be a lot of young people who have come of age, maybe have IDs, and they want to vote. The law requires that you stop registration of voters. Is it 60 days? 60 days before the date of the by-election. So, in where there is an urgency in having that by-election, these young people are going to feel disenfranchised. That's just one example. Now, at a national level, there is an obligation on all stakeholders to ensure, right from them being enabled to get identity cards, which, as I say, is not part of IEBC's mandate, so they get identity cards. IEBC must facilitate them to register as voters. And very importantly, in terms of civic education, and voter education, and the wider civic education anyway, which as a country maybe we haven't done very well, there is a need for all of us to work together to ensure that the youth in this country feel that they matter. That is stakeholder engagement.
So would you think of, I like the part you talked about the obligation of creating awareness on obligations of stakeholders. So would there be specific programs targeting the youth on this?
Yes, I would after receiving advice on how we could do this, and especially what are the financial implications, if I was chair, I would put a high premium on inclusivity for young people, so that they feel this process, they are part of it, they are an integral part of it. As you said when you were asking the question, they even are the larger percentage of the people that citizens that are eligible to vote. So I would look to the National Treasury to specifically provide funds to enhance, especially voter education, and in that particular section of stakeholders, engage them as widely as we can in that, and continuously in that period before the elections. And continue, I think, looking at the wider issue, I think one of the challenges IEBC seems to have is that, especially in terms of funding, the focus only seems to be as you approach elections. And yet things like voter education, registration and so on and so forth are things really which should be completely around the electoral cycle. And I would want, if I was chair, I would want as a matter of policy to engage commissioners so that we collectively engage those who provide funding so that there is a specific target of young people.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Bore Nicodemus. I'll ask you.
Thank you, Chairman, and Charles, for being able to take us through and answering these questions. And I'd like to, looking at your track record and having worked as the CIC chairperson, I'm sure you experienced cartels who wanted the status quo remain and engaging you with your pet subject of football. We have seen referees ending the game while they are halfway going home because they are aware that when they end the game in the middle of the field, they will face a Herculean task of explaining to the people why they have lost the game. Now, we are looking at IEBC and looking at the budgets that they have presented. Some people look at the budget in terms of how they might be able to gain from it. When they talk about the 63 billion shillings that they have asked from Treasury, some people look at how much they can gain from it. And you are applying to be the chairperson of such a commission, which has a lot of interests that are not only political, but also financial. So how would you be able to manage the interests of the country, to balance the interests of the country, at the same time getting rid of the cartels that may be a part of the problems of the internal conflicts within IEBC?
Thank you, Mr. Bore. Let me say, first of all, at CIC, this is not a problem that I experienced. I never, at any level, maybe because there wasn't the kind of budget that is at IEBC. So that I never encountered any cartel in relation to the problems we encountered at CIC had more to do with political resistance to change. That was and it was at all levels, whether you're talking of parliament, whether you're talking of the executive. But at CIC, I did not experience that at all. I can visualize, with the kind of budget that IEBC has, I can visualize how that would be a challenge. I would see my job, if I got to be chair, my job and that of the commission, we are required to provide policy, to oversight the Secretariat as they implement that policy, and to ensure, ethical practice within the commission. So for me, that would be the guiding, focus, that everything be done in accordance with the policy that has been adopted. Everything be done ethically, and the commission to ensure that they discharge the mandate of oversighting. But I think that it's one of those areas that if the commission have all of the mindset, then I think the commission should be able to resist any untoward attempts by what you have described possibly as cartels. But I can visualize that kind of figure probably has people salivating around the country just because of the figure.
As a follow-up question, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind in terms of ethics and trust and constitutional governance in Kenya if you are given the chance to become the chair of IEBC?
Thank you, sir. Given the history of this commission, especially in the last 3 elections, like I said earlier, there are many people, well-minded people, who think it's a very brave thing to go to IEBC, and therein lies the challenge. So what I would want with a good team, if I got this position, with a good team of commissioners, the legacy I would want us to leave is a legacy that this is the commission which was able, because as I said earlier, the biggest challenge we have as far as IEBC and the people of Kenya is concerned is there's a huge trust deficit. The commission that comes in after you've done your work will conduct, because of the 6 years, will conduct one election. So they have one bullet, and the one bullet is to reverse that situation of the trust deficit. So for me, alongside anything else and everything else that the commission will be doing from day one, is what is geared towards reducing that trust deficit. I'm an old-fashioned, or shall I say an old-school lawyer. So for me, the Supreme Court of Kenya tells me the 2022 election met the minimum standards of contemplated by the Constitution. I accept that because that's me as an old-school lawyer. But that's not good enough for the people of Kenya. Beyond what the Supreme Court said, the people of Kenya themselves must feel like the losing side in Rio in the football match. They must feel that, yeah, we lost, but that's the way it goes. We can't all win, but we have nothing negative to say about the Electoral Management Board. So what would I like to be remembered? I would like to be remembered, and you can't do this alone. It can only be part of a team. I would like to be remembered as part of a team, and if I was given the opportunity to serve as chair, I would like to be remembered as the chair who was able to completely reduce the gap of the trust deficit between the people of Kenya and the electoral management body in election issues. That's how I would like to be remembered.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll ask Professor Adams, please, Professor Law.
Thank you, Chair. You've had all the salutations you asked for. Mr. Justice, Charles, Nyachai, but my colleagues have not called you by the name which I'm sure you are given traditionally. So I'll address you as Ayako.
Thank you, sir. Very good name.
Very good name, I believe so. I've heard you, I've looked at your CV, and your big ticket to shoe in into this position of Chair IEBC, if I hear you correctly, is your experience in CIC. Because other than the introduction, IED, you packed it. You are chair there. ICJ, you packed it. It has just been CIC, and I see where you're coming from. And that's where my first question comes in. Another consistent parallel to your CIC experience has been the liner, resistance to change. And at the end, when Bore was questioning you, you said both the executive and parliament. If I may ask, why does Ayake now feel that when it becomes chair of IEBC, that resistance will disappear and he and his team will lower the trust deficit? What will happen that hasn't been there in this resistance to change?
Let me say this. When I talk about the resistance to change at CIC, effectively what I am saying is I expect all levels of resistance even at IEBC, probably because the stakes are higher. At CIC, I wouldn't say that we failed to overcome. I think we went a long way for lack of a better word, in plowing through that resistance. We didn't always succeed. And that's why I gave some examples of what I consider to, especially in terms of legislation like the Ethics and Integrity Act. I felt we tried, but it was viciously, for lack of a better word, watered down. But we lived to fight another day, and you know, even at IEBC, one expects resistance. It's not that I expect that you'll walk into IEBC and everybody will clap for you and say, this is what we want to do. But what I'm saying, Prof, if the focus is on reducing, if not completely obliterating that trust deficit, and you start from day one, then you're not even looking at just you as individuals. You're looking, how can technology help us to do this? How can we improve the policies? Can we address, for example, the question, I don't know if it was Dr. Muli or somebody who asked about the complementary system with the focus on trying. It's not something that I am naive enough to think that can be achieved overnight. But I was answering the question from Mr. Bore, what would I like to be remembered as? That's why I keep saying, even if it's not completely obliterated, because that may not be easy, if it is reduced, as opposed to getting worse, then I will feel I am happy to be remembered that way.
Thank you very much. My other question is that, again, I believe that for IEBC, most of the time, for Kenyans, it is which side of the political divide are you in? And there are those who have time and again become pessimistic that prefix independent should be removed from IEBC because it's never independent. The law that is guiding us in this election panel is very clear on who is qualified or not qualified to run. And I just want to use the analogy that you gave us of the World Cup. And now I won't mention teams because Kenyans are very passionate about the Premier League. But there are usually some referees that you'll just see trending that they are favoring one side. And my question is that if you were to succeed as chair, what's your understanding of independence and impartiality, given that you and other chairs before have been politically affiliated? It's not a secret. As you walk in and wear in a football match the black or whatever color, and you have that firimbi, and you have the yellow card and the red card, what changes when you walk in there as now the referee of the game? Associate with that, because I won't want to ask another question separately, that we know that sometime, I can't remember which year, but 4 commissioners out of the blue resigned and really put the country in a quagmire of quorum issues and so on. And you, in your own statement, which the chair has followed, has told us that you did quit the ESCJ. In fact, you went ahead to say you were earning $2,000 for a job you felt you're not doing. I don't want to ask that, have you been replaced and is that new person earning money for no reason? I don't want to go there. I want to stick to your quitting. Given that those 4 commissioners quit and put the country in the tenterhooks of what finally happened, Kenyans watching will be asking, Charles Nyachae did quit once. Will he quit again? Especially in this high pressure job. What assurance do you give them that that will not happen?
Thank you. Take maximum of 4 minutes.
Okay. The answer is no. I will not quit, because I do not anticipate a situation at IEBC that the job for which I have been recruited, if I become chair, that I simply don't have anything to do, and therefore there's no point in me going to the office. I don't anticipate that. I have endeavored to explain what happened in the ESCJ. At IEBC, the one thing that will not make me quit is any kind of pressure, because this is something I have given thought to. I mean, I am not applying for this job thinking it's going to be a bed of roses. So pressure will not be the reason that I will quit. And because I do not see a scenario where I have no work to do, I will not quit, because that work could be actually, if it's a question, for example, of trying to get resources to do A, B, C, D, that in itself is significant work to do. So the question of quitting, if I got the position, doesn't arise. Now, you made reference to political affiliations. I think your average Kenyan at some point probably has some kind of political affiliation. My mind is very clear that notwithstanding any political affiliation I may have had at any point in my public life, if I got this opportunity and I accepted this job, I will only be guided by the Constitution of Kenya, the laws, and of course, if I get the opportunity, I will be taking an office. An oath of office. So I am able to look the people of Kenya in the eye collectively and tell them that in that situation, I would have every intention of living by that oath of office. Daktari, and allow me to say this just as an example. the way the IEBC Act is designed, several of the honorable members around the table come here by virtue of political parties. But as I sit here as a candidate, I don't have the slightest doubt that every member in this panel is going to do their job impartially and focus on what they believe is the best result. I have no qualms whatsoever. I cannot say that so and so maybe at some point was a member of this party, that and the other. I think we have the capacity to rise above that at different times, and I can look the people of Kenya in the eye and say, yes, I would be able to do the job impartially.
So you are a real footballer. You have returned the ball into his court. But I want to ask you, Prof, to shoot your two high school questions.
The chairman has asked me to shoot my high school question. You are in EACJ, which means you are in the body organogram of the East African community. The EAC Treaty envisages 4 stages. How many are already in place, and which ones are in place and which ones are not yet in place?
If you are to ask, different people have different thinking on this, but if you are to ask me, I would say that what is in place, to a certain extent, not fully, is basically the common market. That's actually the one that I would be comfortable to say is in place. And the others, I would have reservations to say that they're in place. Yeah.
My second question that Chair calls high school question is that the Electoral Commission of Kenya has promulgated at the Lancaster negotiation for the Independence Constitution, ran the 1963 election, then amendments to the Constitution literally buried it until the return of multipartism, when ECK was again reenacted into the Constitution. Which body, which office ran the elections from 1969 to 1988?
There was an office called the Supervisor of Elections. In practice, the elections were run by the then provincial administration. Yeah, I think basically that's the answer I would give. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Tanui?
Mine is a quick one. Justice retired Chairman Emeritus, if I may use those terms. What would you tell Kenyans who are saying that you've served this country as a judge of the East African Court? You've also served Kenyans as chairperson of CIC, and now you should allow other Kenyans to serve as chair IEBC. What can you tell them?
Yes, I would tell Kenyans, essentially I am not before this panel from the perspective of looking for a job, so that one can say, wachia wengine na hao wafanye kazi. Of course it's a job, but, and I reflected long and hard. And I imagine if I was looking for a job, I would probably still, even at my age, get a less dramatic job. The reason that I am offering myself is because, one, I remain passionate about the Constitution of Kenya 2010. I believe that the electoral process is really the backbone of the democratic architecture that the people of Kenya envisaged in that constitution. I believe that I have something to offer to the people of Kenya in this regard, arising from my training, arising from my experience, and arising to my passion about the Constitution. I would not be as arrogant as to imagine that I'm the only one who can do this job. No, I'm just telling the panel and the appointing authority, I'm available. I believe I can do the job. I would be committed if I got the opportunity. So I'm not really, I would want to tell the people of Kenya that I'm not really trying to squeeze into a job which other people can do. Of course, there are many Kenyans who can do the job. But I'm just saying, I believe I can do the job and I am available. That's basically what I'm saying.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Justice. We are required as a panel to receive memorandum from citizens of this country.
Yes.
And as such, put such a memoranda to you, and we have brought that to your attention. One by Bunge la Wananchi and a sworn affidavit by John and a few others that has been put to you, and they allege the following: that you failed Chapter 6 integrity test due to scandals including extramarital affairs and child support lawsuits that you have faced before. Number 2, financial impropriety. They allege that you are linked to Procter and Allen, a cereals company in financial distress that has defaulted 3.7 billion loan, raising doubts about your financial management capacity. Number 3, that you, Chair, lack a public record, and they allege that to implement key electoral reforms, you failed to do this as a chair of CIC, and in coming into office as a chair of IEBC, there will be nothing new that you'll add. Number 4, they say that there's some conflict of interest, that perhaps you have some political patronage that bring in lack of integrity, and you may not be objective in a presidential election. Then they finally, that you lack public trust due to these past controversies, including personal scandals and questionable appointments and financial disputes. What do you have in terms of response? Briefly, kindly.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to respond to those. I did get the memorandum and I looked at it. Of course, this is a public process, and it's right of every Kenyan to make allegations. One would expect that any serious allegations would have some support. Now, when I go through this, the first one of personal morals and integrity are just allegations, and some, I saw a page from some newspaper, and that's all that it is, allegations. Whatever they talk about, they have really not given any substance, and I do not accept the allegations, and I think that's really, on that one, that's what I would say about it. The second one, and I think Procter & Allen, I have never had anything to do with the management of that company. I am a very small shareholder in an investment company which itself has shares in Procter & Allen. I have no direct links with Procter & Allen. So I don't know how I would answer that, because if you're talking about financial management, I've never been involved in the financial management of Procter & Allen. So I really don't know how that would be said to reflect financial impropriety. The allegation that I failed at CIC, I think it's insulting not so much to myself, because I'm a candidate here and they're welcome to say what they wish to say about me. I think it's insulting to the people I worked with at CIC, the entire team, and all the other stakeholders, to say that we did nothing and achieved nothing at CIC. I think the work that CIC did is self-evident. So I think this is just an allegation, like all the others, meant to scandalize. Political patronage. I'm not sure which you referred to, because I saw two things. One, a statement about the manner in which I was appointed to the East African Court of Justice. To the best of my knowledge, that's the way. The treaty has no details, and that's the way the manner I was appointed is the way all judges are appointed through their respective heads of state who sit in the summit, which is the appointing authority. The head of state nominates. And so unless the treaty is changed, I really don't think, and unless every other person who has been appointed from Kenya to the East African Court of Justice has gone there by virtue of political patronage, which I think there is no evidence to that. Again, I think this is purely scandalous. The other thing, there was an allegation of me being related to somebody who they seem to know that is going to be a presidential candidate. Something I don't know anything about. The person they mentioned is not my relative, so I really don't know how I would respond to it. Again, I think it's purely scandalous. I'm very clear in my mind that none of those allegations have any basis whatsoever. And really, Chair, unless members of the panel wish to ask me specific follow-up questions on that, which I will be happy to answer, I consider the entire memorandum as being motivated by ill will for reasons that I don't know, and not being supported by the truth. But if members have anything specific they wish to ask, I have no problem.
Any knowledge of you being a state candidate?
A state candidate for this job? No. I'm not sure what a state candidate is, but I made this decision to run. You know, Mr. Chairman, when somebody talks about a state candidate, they are actually insulting this panel. You're the people who are going to decide who among the people that you have interviewed you are going to recommend to the appointing authority. So the idea of a state candidate is foreign to me.
Your last question.
Thank you, Chairman. Justice Nyachai, there have been allegations by Bunge la Wananchi.
Yes.
In a memorandum that I'm certain that you have seen.
Yes.
Facts which have been disclosed to you earlier, that there was misappropriation while you were at CIC in the year 2015. that the Auditor General's report revealed that at that time, the Commission spent an excess of expenditure of 43 million in a budget of 306 million, which had been approved. That at the time you ended up spending about 349.8 million. Even though largely the amount was accounted for, they say that the 9.2 million was fraudulently paid for the supply of newspapers, a matter which they say to have been subject of criminal investigations. What is your response to these allegations that this panel has received in the form of a memorandum?
Sorry, I'm hearing this for the first time. Was that memorandum sent to me?
I think so, it was.
Separately from the earlier one?
It must have been in the same package.
Oh, I didn't see that one, and my answer is very simple. I know absolutely nothing about that allegation. I was not involved at CIC in anything to do with the financial processes or practice at the Commission. I'm also not aware of it, but in any event, I was not, I would have wanted to know if there were criminal proceedings, who are they against and what was the outcome. I really don't know anything about it.
That is self-explanatory, how you have explained, and I think it is sufficient for the purposes of this interview. We just want accountability in terms of the memorandum that we have received, and of course a fair defense for yourself.
Absolutely.
Which we are grateful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, tell me.
Maybe Chair, to also help us, were you the accounting officer of CIC?
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah.
I think that's enough.
Okay.
Finally, you may not have seen this memorandum, but we have received it this afternoon saying that you are a state officer. Are you a state officer?
I chair the council of the Kenya School of Government. I'm not sure that certainly makes me a public officer. I'm not sure it makes me a state officer.
Okay. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
That's enough. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's taken us long. We have taken almost about 10 minutes above the time we should have taken with you. But thank you for indulging us into your life and your career. Do you have any question for us?
Doesn't have to be a question, or I can make a comment.
You can make a comment.
My comment is to really appreciate the opportunity to interview before yourselves, to wish you well in the process, because you are doing an important public duty, whatever you decide. And to say that for me, the most important thing is that from whichever corner I may be, I remain passionate about the issues that we have been discussing. If I get the opportunity, I will endeavor to do my best. If I don't get the opportunity, I will continue to support the country as it strives to achieve the issues that we have been discussing on IEBC to deliver its mandate from whatever corner. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time and the sacrifice you have made to spend your afternoon with us. We wish you well in this pursuit. There's a bottle of water there. Please do remember to pick your certificates. Asante sana. Thank you. That's yours. It's okay. Wow. Okay. Media, do we ask you again to give us some space kindly, turn off your gadgets, and just allow us to be able to finish up with this candidate. Thank you very much.